And we're starting with another ATM. So come on to your mats. Just onto your mats. Not maybe straight onto your knees. Okay. But give yourselves a little bit of time just to transition from, socialising and coming more into an ATM space. And learning's great, isn't it? So a few people have decided to lie down, but most of you know what's going to happen. So you're ready for action. Okay, so come onto your hands and knees. And place the right side of your face on the floor. And your elbows are in a push-ups position. And you're going to begin to slide your head left and right. So you're going to keep the right side of your cheek on the floor, and you're just going to slide the head left and right. And as you do that, you can sense where does your head go more easily. And also, think of the things that we were looking at throughout this series of the position of your hands and the position of your knees and how that can affect the movement. So for now, you're not rolling the head, it's translating the head left and right. So just taking the head closer to one elbow and then to the other elbow, and feeling as you do that how the weight shifts on your knees. And if you're comfortable, your arms are in a push-ups position. And you might even sense, is it easy to find a comfortable place for the right cheek and the right ear to be resting? You've got to, play around with the base of support. So you have to, you can move your knees about, but you're sort of trying to look at how the foundation of where you can place your knees and your hands, where they're going to make it easier for your head to move. And that goes for, throughout the whole lesson. Okay. And then take a brief pause in sitting. Just, maybe go back on your heels, find a comfortable place to sit. And then return to the same position, but with the left side of your face on the floor. So just swapping now to the left ear and the left cheek on the floor, and you're doing the same movement. You're just exploring where is it comfortable for the left cheek and the left side of the face to be on the floor, and how can you translate the head left and right? So, and again, feeling if you want to move where your hands are in a different position in the push-ups position, and where you want to put your knees. So, if you think you're on your knees, your pelvis is up in the air, and you be able to sense as you move your head in this way, how the weight shifts from one knee to the other, how the pelvis moves in air, and how, even the pressure across your hands is going to change. And just think of, what have you learned from the previous lessons that you've brought with you into this movement? And then take a rest lying on your back. And find a way to easily transition back onto your knees and your hands. And put your right ear on the floor. Your arms are in a push-ups position. So your elbows are up in the air. And think of the movement that we did earlier, or a few times in the series, of where you eventually made a circle around the side of your face. But you may like to begin of just, shifting the weight in a vertical sense from the forehead to the chin a few times, and revisit, how you use your pelvis, and shift your weight forward and back to do that movement. And then you could explore the movement from, going from your ear to your nose, as if you're looking a little bit more towards the ceiling and down the floor. So sort of creating, that in my brain, it's sort of like the points of a compass or the 4 main directions of a clock. You're going left, right, up and down. And then you're going to, in your own time, start going around the circumference and make a circle around your cheek. And you really don't want to do all the movement in your neck, because if you do the movement purely in your neck, I think, there's going to be potentially a lot of strain in that area. So a lot of the lesson again is, how can you spread your attention and think of moving your pelvis in the air, feeling what happens in your shoulder blades to allow the movement, how one shoulder will come up and down in response to the movement. And then change direction of your circle. And notice where you've chosen to place your head to do the circle. So having done that initial movement, did you place your head, I was going to say, in the most comfortable place for you at this point? Or did you think it had to be in the midline? What did you choose to do? And then what you're gradually going to do, you're going to take the head more towards the left arm and make a circle in that position. But, I'm going to let you explore the movement at your own pace. So you can come onto your knees or rest however you like and then continue. But if possible, both of your arms are in a push-ups position and you're gradually taking your head more toward that space created by the left arm and making circles in both directions. And really, really feel, I know what happens between your shoulder blades and your shoulders, what has to respond to the movement of the pelvis and the shifting of your weight. To allow you to do this. And as I've given you a direction, how far do you choose to take your head more in that direction of the left arm? And then leave it and rest. You can rest on your back, so sit back and rest, whichever you prefer. And notice, how has that affected how you're lying? And when I was doing this lesson, I could feel a huge shift across that upper part of my back between the shoulder blades and how the shoulder were resting. I mean, that stuck out in my attention, but what sticks out in yours? And this lesson again has a bit of a configuration of doing something on one side and the other side. So as you come back onto your hands and knees, you're going to organize yourself to do the same exploration, but with the other side of your face on the floor. So now you bring your left ear to the floor, the left side of your face, and you can either choose to do a few preliminary movements of up and down and left to right before you circle, or you can just start circling your head in the position that you've chosen, and then gradually move your head more, this time toward the right arm. And, you know, depending on where you are with the movement, you might even manage to bring the head a little bit under the space created by the right arm and circle there, and make your circles in both directions. And feel how you shift the weight across your knees. And can you have that sense that you're actually creating circles elsewhere in your body? So can you feel as you circle around your face that there's a little circle happening in your knees as you shift the weight, that your pelvis is drawing a circle, and that your shoulder blades and elbows and ribs, you know, how they're all involved in this movement. And I was thinking, in my practice, I always, don't know if I get bemused or amused, when I have people who come to see me and they say, I have neck pain or I have a restriction in my neck. And they have this image that their neck goes from their skull down to the C7 area where there's just the neck. And they have no idea or no image of how they could use more of their spine within the movement. And if you think of this lesson, it's really getting you to use more and more of yourself within, as many ATMs do, within the movement. And then leave it and take a rest on your backs. And return onto your hands and knees and have your right ear on the floor. And have you, as you've done the circling movement, has it become any clearer to you of where you're wanting to place your knees and your arms in a push-ups position? And now, in a way, we're going to return to the first movement of the lesson. You're just going to slide your right cheek, like translated, on the floor so that it goes towards your left elbow. And you're going to slide your head gradually so that it comes underneath the left elbow, the gap that's created there. And it's like you're taking your head in an arc. You're taking it underneath the left elbow and coming back. And you're feeling, so your arm at the moment isn't involved. Your arms are in a push-ups position and both hands are on the floor. And you're just feeling, how do I need to organize myself, my pelvis, my shoulders, to allow my head to come underneath the gap of the left elbow. And your knees are staying relatively in the one position, so they might be shifting weight across your knees, but they're sort of providing you with the foundation. But of course, you know, if you think that your knees could be in a more optimal place to allow this movement to occur, feel free to explore that. And then just take a rest, maybe sitting back. It's only going to be a brief, I was going to say a brief respite. But respite's a funny word, isn't it? Because it indicates it, I guess it's got connotations, but it's a brief change of position. And then come back to having the right side of your face on the floor. And this time you're going to put your right arm out to the right as you did yesterday. So your right arm's out to the right. And you're going to take your head toward the left and straighten your left leg. So your toes are in a push-ups position and you're just starting to explore again that movement of transitioning the weight from your left foot up towards the right shoulder and arm, and feeling now, where can the head go in terms of underneath the gap? Having done those preliminary movements, is it easier to bring the head more underneath the left arm? And, things to continue monitoring, or I think Dennis calls it an inventory. How do you shift your weight? And things I'm thinking of, what's happening in your pelvis. And so if you think of shifting the weight, how does it go from the foot through the pelvis, the middle of your back, onto the right shoulder and head? And and I think those circular movements at the beginning, have they reminded you of the importance of, as you do the movement, of thinking of looking up toward the ceiling and allowing the back of your head to come to the floor? And decide how much you want to explore the movement before you pause, because after, it's a bit like a commercial break, isn't it? After the pause, we're going to do the same thing on the left side of the face. So now I've kind of got this metaphor of TV and commercial in my head. So I'm wondering if I'm going to be like a commercial channel and give you rest on a very frequent basis. Or you're going to be listening to maybe the ABC in this lesson and have to just continue on without a break. And then leave it. If you're still moving, just take a pause. And then return to your knees and your arms in a push-ups position and put your left ear on the floor. And begin to take the left side of your face toward the gap created by the right arm. Okay. So initially you can just do a few movements with your arms in a push-ups position and feeling how the head moves now on this side to the space created underneath the right arm, and how you use the shift of weight in your legs and in your pelvis and across your shoulders to bring the head into a place under the right arm. And then when you found that place, you can bring the right arm out. Sorry, maybe the wrong arm, the left arm. I think you know the arm more than me. The left arm out to the side and start transmitting the weight from your right foot. And your toes, when you're thinking of, the feet have to be in a running position so that the toes are tucked underneath, so that you can start to use that straightening of the knee to create a diagonal line from your right leg to the left shoulder. And again, notice where you've placed your head and how much the back of the head might now come to the floor. And think, of translating your head. Do you keep your head in the midline, or do you really tuck it underneath the gap of the right arm? Because it's a very different demand on your neck. And as you do that movement, start to explore with your right hand the floor around your head. So think of how you can move the position of the arm that you've got in a push-ups position. How can you just start to lighten that arm and the hand and explore the floor or the area around your head? So it could be the floor, or you might just choose to take the hand over the head. And it's nice to see some people, self-regulating and knowing when it's enough and not overdoing. Because remember, it's all about creating a space for yourself, your own learning environment, so that you learn from these lessons. It's not, anything that's... The achievement is in the learning, not in the ability to do the movements. And then leave it and rest however you like. And I always think it's really interesting, this idea, of learning and being process orientated. And I mentioned yesterday that idea of, in Aikido, that my intent is not to throw my partner. My intent is to pay attention to how I'm organizing my attention and my movement. And if I do that continuously in an efficient, well-organized manner, my partner will fall or roll as a consequence of it. And I'm much more likely to have a better result, and the person's going to feel the impact of my organization more fully than if I really think, oh, I've got to throw that person. But, it is always very tempting. I think we've just culturally, we've been brought up as achievement and results-driven culture rather than a process-orientated one. But as you've all been very good in learning to stay within the moment and exploring things, you're going to return to the same position with your left ear on the floor and your left arm out to the left. And you're going to continue with the same movement, but you're going to now see how can you bring both legs or straighten both knees. So you straighten your right leg And then you start exploring how the left leg can also straighten. And again, you go slowly. You can think of, as you're straightening your right knee, when have you got enough balance over the left shoulder to allow the second knee to come into the air? And how do you position your base of support? And you might bring one leg up and then the other knee up. Where do you have to shift your weight to? So remember at the end of your, I think maybe it wasn't quite at the end, but that idea of, balancing. So it's a very balancy lesson, but can you find the balance on your shoulder, on the left shoulder, that allows you to bring the other knee into the air? And if it is possible for you to have both knees off the ground and to be able to balance on both feet, then you could explore walking your feet in an arc toward your head. And in the lesson, it actually says, what you did earlier with freeing the right arm from the floor. If you're up to that point, can you just let the right arm come away from the push-ups position as you walk your feet towards, in an arc to one side and the other side? And if you want to watch and see how other people organise themselves a bit to do the movement, do that. And then leave it and come onto your backs and take a rest. And lie on your back and notice the changes that are occurring. And imagine rolling your head side to side. So now just think of rolling your head side to side. And as you imagine it, notice what pace you've chosen to roll the head in your imagination. And then change the pace of the rolling of the head so that you're imagining rolling your head very quickly from side to side. And then in your imagination, you might just find a way to imagine your head coming to rest. And you do that a bit like taking your foot off the accelerator and just slowing in your imagination the speed of the rolling of your head down, or you just go zoom on the brake and stop the rolling of your head. And now, staying on your back, bend your knees and bring your legs overhead. So like you did yesterday, find a way to bring your pelvis into the air and your legs into the air. And I know some people said afterwards to me that they found that by hooking their toes and their index finger, how that made it a lot easier. So whichever way you like, just bring your pelvis and your legs into the air. And then begin moving your legs in the air, left and right. And you can support your pelvis in your hands. You can have your arms on the floor. But the idea is that you start to take your legs left and right. And again, you can also play with, is it easier? So think of your legs, they're somewhere towards the floor over your head. And play with how far your legs are apart. So is it easier to move your legs left and right if your legs are together, or if you open your legs and start to move your pelvis left and right, and feel how that moving of your legs left and right, how that shifts the weight across your shoulders, and how does your head have to accommodate that movement? So does your head, somehow translate or roll? What does the head do to stay comfortable as you move your legs left and right? And, you can come back from the position and then return to it. And is it easier for you to move your legs to one side than the other side? So, does your pelvis somehow move more easily to the right or to the left? And then find a way to come back to lying on your back. So how can you revert? Now start playing with the idea of reversibility. And how can you reverse the movement of having your legs overhead to slowly bringing them back down to the floor? Because if you think of a roll, there's a momentum that's involved if you're rolling really quickly. But, Feldenkrais's idea of reversibility and having conscious voluntary control throughout the movement. And now as you're resting on your back, imagine your head rolling slowly whilst your eyes move quickly. And as you imagine it, is there, there's sort of always that interesting point where the imagination becomes the action. So as you're imagining the movement, do you feel that your eyes are wanting to move? Is there a tendency to roll your head? And how easily can you imagine this sort of differentiation of the head going slowly and the eyes moving quickly? And one of the things that I came to my attention or to my mind during these lessons, often during these lessons we come back to the basic, that circling movement of the head, rolling of the head, and in a sense the emphasis to me was how much can I learn from these movements that gives me greater freedom of movement in my head. What does it teach me to organize in the shifting of my weight, getting more organization in the area of my chest that allows my head to move more freely? And how then does that affect, my organization in standing and moving around? And allow that image to go and pause. And now we're going to have another change of position. So you're going to sit up and you're going to bend your right knee and have the right foot on the floor. And your left foot is going to then go into the gap created by the right knee. And I'll give you a clue. Come forward on your mats, because you're going to actually now start going from this position into rolling diagonally. So, you want to have something softish or supportive underneath you. And begin to roll diagonally from your right hip to your left shoulder. Sorry? So your right foot's in standing and you've got your left leg underneath. So how comfortable are you just rolling back onto your back and having that idea that it's a diagonal movement? It's not a somersault, because somersault you're going to go through your midline. But, think of all the work we've been doing on the diagonal and how that's changing orientation now. And how can you think of the orientation of because judo rolls a diagonal movement. How can you go from the right toward the left shoulder? So think of your legs coming toward the left. And how does it feel internally? So, this is now starting to play with, well, you could, you might think of it as you're falling backwards, but it's not really falling, it's moving, because you've got all that, you've done so much and you're learning of how to organize yourself on this diagonal, but in a different orientation. So just feel now, how can you make this feel comfortable? And remember that if it doesn't feel safe, or if you don't want to do it, well, then don't do it. But, if it can be just fun, see if you can recreate that playfulness of being a little kid, and you're just wanting to throw your legs so that they come towards the left shoulder and feeling that diagonal. And think of the relationship of your chin to your knees, and staying in a ball. So the distance between your knees and the chin stays reasonably the same. And you don't need to go over. It's just getting that idea of how, you've had all of this softening and rounding, of how you can now throw your feet towards the left shoulder. And, there's a little bit of momentum assist. And again, you've got to be spatially aware, because up to now we've been very much aware of our own process and our own learning and organization, but now you're rolling and there are people around you. So as any martial artist would tell you, you need to be aware of your environment. And it often intrigues me in the dojo how, you'll get people, there'll be quite a lot of people on the mat doing techniques involve throwing, and beginners, they just don't think of that they might be throwing somebody into somebody else. So you've got to be the marshal and watch out. But I know you've all got much better spatial awareness and a sense of what's happening around you. And then let it go and take a rest. And as you pause on your back, in your mind, go through the movement to the other side. And come up to sitting, and this time you've got your left knee bent and your left foot on the floor, and your right foot is under the gap created by the knee. And you're going to think of rolling on a diagonal to the other shoulder. So to start exploring how before you were exploring the diagonal toward the left shoulder, but now you're thinking of how can you move your feet and roll them overhead so the diagonal goes from your left hip to the right shoulder. And you know, this change of orientation, can you keep orientated to the front of the room? If you think it's a roll, it's not, you're not going to go sideways onto your side and end up looking at one of the side walls, but the idea of the roll is that you go over the shoulder in a diagonal, but your orientation is in the same plane, if you like, you know, still orientated to the front of the room. And what's this side like? And just think this can be fun. The fun element. Oh, that's this afternoon. Or if not fun, you know, how can you make it light and easy, exploratory, be a little kid? And, you know, if you don't get quite to the left shoulder, it doesn't really matter, but just think of that as, you know, that's where you're wanting to go on the diagonal. And just, you know, do as, again, you know, work out how much you want to do. And for those who are, you know, playing away, is this side the preferred side? And take a rest. And come onto your hands and knees. And have your arms in a push-ups position. And put one side of your face on the floor, whichever side you choose. And we're going to go back to the beginning of the lesson, and you're just going to make some circles around your, you know, your cheek and your face. And as you do that, you can, you know, reflect maybe on how all of these movements, how they've affected the movement of circling. You know, what have you learned? So in the lesson, your arms are just in a push-ups position, and you're just circling your face in one direction and the other. And then when you've done that a little bit, you turn your face or turn your head so the other side of your face is on the floor. And you repeat the process of just circling your head in both directions. And have you chosen, you know, to have your head, is it clear now where you want to do the circling around your face? And as you circle, feel now how you're shifting the weight, how your pelvis is circling, how the shoulder blades, even the elbows can circle. You might even feel a circling action across, your hands, the palms as everything circles. And remember, when you're ready, you can just turn your head to the other side and circle around the second side. And then when you've completed that exploration, just come up and pause in sitting. So if you're still moving, just bring it to completion and come up to sitting. And then come up to standing. And feel, what's your impression of your organisation as you're standing? And then have a walk around the room. And as you're walking, you can just take in the room, and you might take in the teacups and the urn. And your intention may shift to having a tea break.